Welcome to the CGS podcast, where we discuss entrepreneurship and how social media is used to build a brand. Hey everyone, my name's Andy. I'm the host of this podcast, and today's guest is Andy Main. Andy Main is an MMA fighter, black belt in jiu-jitsu, and also a serial entrepreneur. So, Andy, I want to thank you for being here, and we'll just get right into it. So,
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about your background in MMA and kind of like how that translates over to your entrepreneurship.
Yeah, definitely. So I was always a very competitive athlete since I was very young. And while I was in high school, I was a competitive skateboarder, snowboarder, participated in track and field in school. And the group of friends that I was involved in decided we were going to try jiu-jitsu. They all moved on to the next thing. I fell in love with it, and being a natural competitor, I went from there right to competing 2 months into training. Fell in love with competing in jiu-jitsu and kind of never really thought I was going to be a professional MMA fighter. It wasn't my plan by any means, but I just loved competing, and had my first fight and lost to Jimmy Rivera, who was a UFC fighter later on, a training partner of mine now, or was for a while, and just completely was blown away by the sport in general, just how cool it was, how it felt, getting out there. It was just something completely different. So to make a fairly long story short, my career kind of got shot out of a cannon because I decided to go all in on it. Switched gyms at the time, started training with a very high-level team, ultimately went pro after just 2 amateur fights, and then after 4 pro fights was on The Ultimate Fighter. And then that's when things really started to happen.
Yeah, I remember that time, because I remember you from like when we were in electrical school, so that's
Sure,
like way
yeah,
back. So I remember following you, and that show, I mean, you were on what, season
12.
12.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's been going on for a while, but yeah, I remember watching that. I'm like, holy shit, like I know this guy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was kind of like, holy shit too, because at the time, basically they did tryouts. I don't even know if they're doing The Ultimate Fighter anymore, but they did open tryouts back then, and general consensus was you go and try out as soon as you feel comfortable, like as a pro. It's going to take you 2-3 times to get on anyway. So I went and tried out, drove down to, I believe it was Nashville, and I got on my first try. So I was only 4 fights in. I was 21. I was close to being the youngest person on the show because the limit was 21 because there was alcohol on the show. And I turned 21 maybe 2 weeks before filming started, right? So like it was very tight. It was very close. But that was, it was a great experience, but I didn't have the experience to compete with some of the guys that were on the show. So after that, again, like I said, it kind of got blown out of cannon because now I'm headlining all the shows that I'm fighting at. I'm being flown around the country to train and fight, and I'm still trying to like get better and figure out like what path I want to take. I'm still working. I was in school, so I decided to drop out of school, and then I had to make a decision. And I knew at some point I probably would want to open a gym. I had a little bit of money from the show after doing the show, so I decided to talk to my brother, who was finishing up his associates, and we're like we might as well do it now. Like we're both, like, he was doing very well on the jiu-jitsu circuit as well, so we were both kind of popular in our area as far as, popularity goes, and it's like, why not now? Like, we've got a little bit of money, we're 21 and 23, we can take risk. If we fall on our face, what's the worst that happens? We're still in our, like, our friends are coming out of college with $100,000 in debt.
Yep.
A year from now, we're, if we fall on our face and have no debt and just our business doesn't work out, no big deal, but, we should do okay. And that was kind of like how things got started. And then we realized that we really love doing business.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I was going to actually ask you, like, when you did become a black belt, was pure MMA on your radar, or did you kind of you're like...
We actually started pure MMA. I was still a brown belt,
and
Mikey was actually a purple belt.
Really?
Yeah. So, and again, like, it's not something I would necessarily recommend, but especially now because there's so many black belts, back then there wasn't that many. And again, like the kind of factor that we had was that we were young, and we had a large group of people around us that were also young, interested in doing it. And I was I was doing MMA, and like, yes, like people look at like in doing jiu-jitsu, they want to learn from a black belt, but I was also a pro fighter that was in the UFC.
Yeah, exactly.
So like there was that kind of aspect of it. So like that's where I got more, maybe a little bit more credential at that stage. And then I was a black belt within maybe 6 months from when I opened, so it wasn't that far after. And not for nothing, like we were basically competitive with all the black belts in the area at the time. So anybody that knew the difference that would come over and was like, all right, let's see what these guys, purple belt, brown belt, we would usually be able to
hold
our own or beat them at that time.
Yeah.
So it pretty quickly, and it really ultimately didn't really matter. Like it was more about how we were treating people that ultimately grew the program. But yeah, so long answer to your question.
So Pure has been in business for quite a while now. What would you say was like the aha moment that like you're like, all right, we started this and now we really know that this is going to be sustainable? And like the worry, I mean, every business owner has that worry in the back of their head that something might not work out. So
Right.
What would you say was the moment you're like, okay, things are going to work and we're really like growing this brand?
Yeah. So I think there was a few aha moments. One was just in the process of opening, kind of like sitting back and seeing who else was running businesses, and we're like, okay, like if they could do it, we can do it. It's not like some unreachable thing. But in the process of building the business, it was probably around the 6th month where, we were doing well. We were growing very quickly. One of the things that I did a lot of in the beginning was sit down, get on the phone with anybody that had experience and was doing it successfully. And talking to like a lot of different people, again, it kind of like removes a lot of the fear and the worry, and then also making good decisions. Like one of the good decisions in the beginning was keeping our overhead super low. Our first gym was in the back of a warehouse, very small space. I mean, we made it super nice. It was an awesome place, but it was cheap. Like we needed 18 people to cover ourselves. So like that was sort of the primary aha, like, oh, if we don't overextend ourselves, then this is not that hard to survive, right? Then the second and the major aha was like when probably around that 6-month mark where we were like, oh, wait a minute, like the way that we're doing things, the way that we're treating people are really responding to it. They're referring people. We were spending no money on marketing. We were just, posting on social media but our students were constantly bringing people in, and it was this perpetual growth model that we didn't even realize was going to happen. And it was almost primarily because of how we were treating them. We were very transparent about how our billing and our pricing and our programs and our structure and everything that we were doing. And I think people grasped onto that. So for us, it was like, you know what, like there's a major element here of just treating people right, doing right by your members, that has sort of like a contagion effect where like they want to tell other people that they're friends with about the place that makes them feel good. And that was a major thing for us. And to this day, it's the core. I mean, we've become more refined as a business and business owners, but it's definitely the core of every business that we go into.
Yeah, I could definitely see the best part about it is getting feedback and like knowing that your members are super happy.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, people can go anywhere to train, but to have that community and everything, I think that's huge. So that being said, what would you say is like the worst thing that you've encountered so far with running Pure?
Well, hands down, it's we unfortunately had some people that we thought we could trust that we couldn't trust, and that again, that kind of goes back to just putting your best foot forward and giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. But I had one of the things that we decided to do was we wanted to put our primary focus into our two programs, excuse me, Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. So we brought in other people to build other programs that we would otherwise never have as additional income streams, but we also work out commission models. So essentially, people can come in, almost build a business of their own inside of our business, and then there's a commission split based on how big the program gets, that kind of thing. So we had a situation where, ironically, we didn't actually reach out to that person. That person's wife reached out to us. I said, "Hey, my husband is and somebody that I knew from high school actually, is a great instructor, but doesn't have really a place to do it, doesn't have the money to start his own thing. Like, is there anything that you have going on?" We said, "Actually, we've been thinking about doing this. These are the time slots that I can give him, and this is the model that I would offer him." In which case, basically, he could start his own thing with zero overhead. I fronted some money. I fronted him for a couple of months while it was building, so that he, had some money to live, and then ultimately he was able to build. But then on the back end, when the program started making a good amount of money, he turns around and is now thinking to himself, "Well, wait a minute, I could go get, open my own place, and my rent would be lower than what Andy or what Pure MMA is making off of this program," even though he was making a good amount of money off of the program, and it kind of like completely was lost on him. Well, I invested in you. I paid for this entire place. I do the marketing. You're part of my funnel, all of these different things. Ultimately, he wasn't happy with the situation. So instead of working out a way to get himself out of it, he started stealing from us. And then that was the worst experience because, it caused a lot of mayhem. He was the leader of that program, even though it was our program. And so we had to fire him, obviously, because he was stealing. And then now I'm scrambling. And thankfully, again, this is where I think putting out, being a good person and doing the right thing always comes back, is we ended up with somebody 10 times better, who's a great person and is doing fantastic at the gym now. But dealing with that situation was one of the most stressful things that I've ever dealt with.
Yeah, I can imagine that's huge because trust is the number one thing when it comes to
and
running a business.
And it makes it hard to trust people moving forward, right? The next person coming in, who, like I said, she's fantastic, runs a great program, one of the best people that I know. But in the beginning, I got my guard up like crazy, And again, maybe there are certain things that I should have done better, red flags that I could have seen. But again, I give people the benefit of the doubt, and ultimately that mindset has had a net positive. So even though I dealt with that, oh well, I lost a little bit of money, I lost a little bit of, I had a little bit of a headache, but I'm 10 times better for it, and I continue to grow and do better, and I continue to win by having success. Where, and I don't wish failure on anybody, including him. I think, he should have been held responsible. And unfortunately, COVID kind of it was the timing ended up in a situation where COVID hit, the police dropped the ball on everything, and all they were focused on was COVID. So he never really got held accountable, which is frustrating. But again, at the end of the day, I know his gym is, he's not making what he made with me even yet, guaranteed. I would bet money that he's not, and if he had stayed with me, he probably would have been making double what he was making back then. Yeah. So it's karma comes around.
Yeah. That being said, how do you stay motivated, and where do you see Pure in 10, 20, or 30 years from now?
So, I mean, overall, I think motivation is, for me at this point, it's built in. It's actually a problem sometimes because I have so much ambition and only so much time. And now I have a family as well, right? So I've been with my wife for 12 years, but we have a 1.5-year-old. So that's a new experience, and that has become a priority in terms of time. But other than that, I and my brother as well, we constantly are working on ways to improve the gym, grow, pivot, make constant improvements. but also outside of the gym. Like we didn't want to just be pigeonholed. So we opened up a few more businesses, and like we continue to do that. And now it's that balance of, it's hard for me to say stay motivated. Like in my psyche, there's no like not being motivated. It's just about where that motivation goes. Because sometimes it is like, okay, the gym is something that's been going on for 10 years, and we're at a point now where it's sort of like a well-oiled machine. And I did take my foot off the gas a little bit with the gym, where like I might be at 1,000 members instead of 600 members if I had kept my foot on the gas. But I kind of wanted to focus on other things, create additional income streams other places, and also to like not get too bloated too fast, because we didn't know how to handle, like, even though our gym is huge, at a certain point, like we have 60 people on the mat. So like if we get another 200 people, where are they going to go?
Yeah.
Something has to give. Like, so I might have to split off, like take, like I said, we have 5 programs. So I might have to take one of those programs and put it in its own facility. Like, I don't know yet. And I'm not prepared to do that yet. So at this stage, it's more maintaining, trying to continue to grow at a much more sustainable pace than in the beginning, where we were like, everybody everywhere, like, let's get from 0 to 300. And it didn't matter how, like we could sustain that growth, but sustaining to like 1,000 members, it's like a whole different ball game.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Yeah. Definitely could become overwhelming. And I mean, you got a lot going on. So you not only own the MMA gym, you own a couple pliables. You mentioned before you and your brother are working on a supplement company, and you're also an investor in a hard seltzer company. So let's just touch on that. And I guess tell me how you like transition from, not necessarily transition, but you added in these restaurants and so forth to your already probably overwhelming plate, because most people don't understand what goes into just running one business.
Yeah, and also, and meanwhile, I was also still fighting professionally, training full time throughout. Only in the past couple of years have I not been, my training I'm still training every day, but not 2-3 times a day. So that's like, trying to train 2-3 times a day, needing to sleep and eat and all these things on top of building businesses. It was a lot. But essentially we knew we wanted to add an additional income stream. Anybody that's ever competed in jiu-jitsu, especially if you ever went out to California, it was commonplace for Sambazon, the acai company, to have a little stand outside all these tournaments and sell acai bowls. And it was one of the primary things that my brother and I would look forward to go compete out there. And then one day we were like, these are so great. It's so like right on brand with jiu-jitsu in general, but also just like the fitness culture. Like, what if we do like a smoothie acai bowl thing inside the gym? And then we didn't realize we didn't really have the space for it. So then we were like, let's get a food truck. So we actually went and bought a food truck. Actually, I shouldn't say it. We went and bought a truck that we were going to convert to a food truck. It was a piece of crap. Because again, like same model, like let's do it as cheap as possible and then grow. But then in that process, Pliables was kind of on its way up. There was franchising opportunities, and we realized we had a connection with somebody at Pliables corporate. So long story short is we just talked with them, decided. My dad asked about coming in as a partner, and now we have 3 people investing in it rather than just the 2 of us, which allowed us the amount of money that we needed, because it's a little bit more expensive to do the franchise, but it cuts out a whole lot of the learning curve. And now knowing what I know, I almost guarantee that I would have either maybe not failed, but it would have been a very like small company relative to what we have now, which is 3 stores, and it's cookie cutter, and it's great product and everything's kind of handled for us, other than like the operation, which, was just us learning how to build a team around a restaurant instead of I shouldn't even say a restaurant, like a cafe style place. And then growing from there. And then the supplement, again, it's sort of like different but the same, right? So still kind of in the fitness industry. Our network kind of gives us an initial platform of people to try it out, test it out. We're building a model that's very cheap to run on the back end as we grow. So we're not like spending, hemorrhaging money as we go. We slowly, and we're figuring things out. And then the other stuff, the investments are more things that, like, when I was younger, I was like, I know I have the advantage of youth right now, so I'm going to throw money into some things that are more risky, where like now I'm a little bit more conservative with how I invest, semi-conservative. I still buy crypto. Yeah, which is
I'm
risky,
sure.
but I'm still a believer.
A
But
little bit of Dogecoin. Is that still?
I don't have Dogecoin. No, I'm more educated than that. If you're buying Dogecoin, then
you're in trouble.
No, I'm actually very. It's one I spend a lot of time on it. I love the crypto space, but it is definitely the Wild West. It's a risky space. But anyway, it's essentially just kind of like gone from like it. So the investments that I have, like the wine spritz company. Again, it was a friend who they created a company that they sold to Vita Coco, made a lot of money on it. This was their new venture, so we invested in that. Will it pay off? Hopefully. I don't know. It's already been a few years. COVID obviously slowed everything down in like the drink space because there was nobody partying. And then I have another company that's actually selling AI generated simulation software for fighter jet training to the U.S. government. So which literally started as a shopping app. So that's what I invested in, was my friend who was building a shopping app, and then he pivoted because that didn't work. He pivoted again. So it was really just me investing in him because I knew he grinds. He's like me. We're very similar. We actually had a very similar kind of upbringing. And I just was like, listen, here, if this doesn't work, just take me along the ride. Whatever you figure out, like, just give me my cut. And he honored that. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully one of these things pays off. So that was like, I don't know if I would make those types of investments now, but it's still cool having a couple like random side projects.
I mean, and you got to take a risk too. I mean,
yeah,
that's how people build businesses. So
yeah, I mean, there's risk no matter what, and no matter what you do, it's like you got to just go for it. Sometimes it's just, at least when you build yourself, when you're investing in yourself, whether it's education, and I don't mean college necessarily, I just mean educating yourself on what you're doing, or just going for it, starting a business and learning as you go. If you know that you won't stop, eventually you'll figure it out. You'll figure something out. It may not pay you millions of dollars right away, but you'll usually figure out something that'll sustain. Whereas like when you give somebody else money, the fear is always like when they get tired, like you can't control them. So if they're just like, forget it, this project's not working, they're gonna move on to the next thing and then try to raise money from somebody else, and then you're left in the dust. That's why I only invested in people that I knew would kind of like honor like the money that I put out back then, even if it ended up being something different down the line.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before you're married, you have a kid. So how does your work-life balance work? How do you juggle everything and stay sane and keep not only the businesses happy, but of course at home as well?
Yeah. So I try to be very cognizant of priority. My family is definitely a huge priority. The one thing that, fortunately, since we waited a little while, my businesses, like particularly the gym, got to the place where I don't have to be like on site 24 hours, but like all the time. I work a lot, but a lot of that work is from home. So like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, the figuring out that I'm doing, marketing, but any of the things that I'm doing from my computer, I try to do at home. My house is 5 minutes from my gym, right? So I did that on purpose. I mean, it was a process to get there, but I knew I wanted to be very close to the gym so I could be in and out. I could get home, because for a while I lived a half hour from the gym.
Oh, wow.
So like I would leave in the morning. There's no way I could run home for lunch and then get back to the gym to teach. Whereas like now, like I can leave my house, half hour before class starts, get there, teach the class, go home. I'm home. I'm gone for 2 hours, and then I'm home for 3 or 4 hours. So anyway, I've tried to build as much of my life around convenience and cutting out like waste time, so that I can spend a lot of time at home. Because being home, especially now, I mean, it was always important spending a lot of time with my wife, but especially now, like I don't want to miss stuff with my daughter.
Yeah.
So I try to prioritize that. But also multitasking, like I'm home and I am sometimes on the computer or whatever. I'm working on things while I'm also engaging with the family. Um, and listen, there's only so much time, there's only so much time. And the reality is no matter what you do, if you pull time from one thing and you put it in something else, the one thing you pulled time from is going to suffer in some way. It's going to be affected. But again, sort of like with the gym, like I said, I pulled my foot off the gas, right, a few years ago. By no means on the quality, just on the growth, right? But when I did that, it allowed me to put focus and priority into these other businesses and these other things, which flourished and started to grow. And then I, ultimately built teams to manage those because I knew I couldn't personally manage everything, right? The way I do with the gym. Like I'm still very hands-on with the gym. So in terms of like work-life balance, it's the same idea. It's just where's the priority and where am I willing to let things kind of pull back, or can I pay to replace my time somewhere? So like my gym has a full-time manager now, Ashley, and she's fantastic. And like I didn't need a manager for a very long time, and to be honest, like we could get away without a manager, but then the gym would definitely suffer from me not putting priority or pulling some of my time away from it. Whereas by bringing her in, not only am I replacing a lot of the time that I was putting into the gym, but now I have a third person that has her own strengths, and a lot of those strengths I didn't even realize we didn't even have, and she's fantastic. And now it's almost like a third like partner. Like she's invested in the gym and very like she trains, her husband trains, and she has strengths that I didn't have and Mikey didn't have that made the gym even better. And I think will be a large part of propelling the gym to those numbers that I was talking about in the long term. So that was just kind of like, I didn't even realize how much. I thought I was just replacing my time. And now I'm like, oh, okay, wow, there's a lot of skill set out there that I don't necessarily like. I like to think I know everything, but I don't, or I'm good at everything, but I'm not. I recognize that now. So now it's like, it's using kind of all of those pieces to make the whole ship continue to grow.
Yeah, I find that to be a thing as well in the video production business. Like at first I wanted to be all hands on all the time, and I realized for me to continue growth, I need to employ people and have them, just let them take the reins on certain things, and that'll get things done. So that's been huge.
There's a saying that, like, I took a lot of marketing classes at one point, courses I should say, and like there was a saying where it's like sometimes you have to ask who, not how, which really opened my mind. I actually learned a lot from those, but that was one thing that was very a prominent thing that stuck out to me, where I was like, okay, like when something new needs to get done or something needs to change, don't just ask how, like, how am I going to do this? Ask who can do this. Because sometimes there's somebody that can do it a lot better, a lot faster, a lot more efficient than you can, and paying them, what they're worth is going to ultimately get. It's just, what's hard is in growing a new business and like coming from that point where you had nothing and now you have some income, is like it's so hard to let go of what's now coming in. Like you don't want to be like, okay, like just for a round number, like finally I got up to where I'm making $5,000 a month take home. Well, if I bring in that person in and I have to pay that person $2,000 a month, well, now I'm down to $3,000, or if I'm splitting it, if it was me and my brother, now I'm down $1,000 each. So now we got to, but will that bringing in that person and pay that person, and again, these aren't the actual numbers, these are just, round numbers, but paying that person their $2,000, is that going to get me to $10,000? You know what I mean? It might, I don't know, like you have to kind of assess and work and figure those things out. But it was a very prominent lesson for me, was to start asking the question of who can do it and not just how can I do it.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
You just don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah, you get spread too thin, you end up not getting anywhere.
Right.
So.
And then everything eventually starts to suffer. And that's what you don't want to happen, is or you won't enjoy it. And that has happened to me, where there was, particularly right after that situation happened that I was telling you about, where I took over everything, right? Like, so like the kickboxing program, I was managing this kids program that I wasn't managing before. So I'm working all these extra hours on things that I didn't really, they weren't that, like, didn't bring that much income. So it wasn't like, it wouldn't have been a big deal for me to lose the programs short term. The bigger problem was that, like, these people were loyal to us. They had been training with us. So I didn't want to just, like, disappoint all these people that trained with us and just be like, sorry, your instructor's gone, so you're all gone. You know, you guys have been here some 2-3 years at this point. So I took over all of it, but in the process of doing that, I started to hate being at my gym because, like, I'm doing so much stuff that I didn't think was made sense for me to be doing, both in practice and in long term and growth. Because again, now I'm doing things that are taking my time away from my home time, my, building my other business time, my training time, whatever. And that weighs on you, and that gets weary, can make you grow weary and frustrated. And then again, everything starts to kind of like falter at that point.
Yeah. Plus the burnout, just
Yeah.
like getting up out of bed every day and like, oh, I got to do this again. So
Right.
Definitely. I'm sure it builds up.
As long as you know you're on that right path, like, because you're going to do things that you don't like to do no matter what. It's just a matter of, like, having that vision. And when you know that, like, a piece of what you're doing or part of what you're doing is not helping you get to where you're trying to go, that's when things really start, like, you can burn out pretty fast. And like I said, you can't allow that. You can't think that it's not going to start to affect other things. And then, God forbid, fortunately, I was able to recognize it. And at a certain point, I just was like, I'm not doing this. And then I was like, who do I know? I asked the question. I was like, who can do this? And then I had a person, and they're 10 times better than me at it. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, it wasn't that hard, but for me at the time, I was like, I didn't want to give up the reins to anything because I didn't trust anybody, So, but I was killing myself doing that. So, but that's how you learn the lessons.
I can't imagine like what the relief was like. I'm sure like just like a huge weight lifted off your shoulders, and you can focus on all these other aspects of your life. So I'm sure like, yeah, it sucked. It was shitty for a while, but I'm sure like that was probably more rewarding than a lot of the other things. Just knowing that you can divvy things up and not have to worry. I think that's huge when it comes to business.
Yeah. Well, that, and also you're gonna realize that you're not that important. It's like you are, but you aren't. Like, obviously, like, it's our brand and you're building and you're the one that's pushing the ship forward and or steering the ship and all those things. So obviously you're important, but like, to like what you were saying before, like, you think that you need to do things because in your mind, unless it's because you don't have the money to pay somebody, which is different. But in your mind, you always feel like you can do it better. And if I give up the reins, it's not going to be as good. It's not going to be as good or whatever. And then you realize there's plenty of other people, particularly in particular areas, that can be just as good or better. And that's when you're like, oh, okay, like, I'm not, like, I'm going to stop teaching this class. The program's going to fall apart, And then there's like always any type of change creates a little bit of turmoil. In that, like, people don't like change, like, everybody's doing their thing, all that, and then all of a sudden there's a new instructor, and they're like, whoa, like everybody's like, what's going on,
Who's this guy?
yeah, and then you're just like, this is so and so, they're awesome. You're gonna see that they're awesome, and if they are awesome, it's gonna take like a week for people to adjust, and then now that's their instructor, and that goes for like a lot of different aspects of doing business. But yeah, and like, that's what I've realized, and that's where that comes from. It's not just who because like you need somebody to do the work. It's also who because like you're not always the man, like, and you don't have to be the man. So it's more just a matter of like being pragmatic about it and saying like, okay, does this make sense for me to put my time in, and hopefully something that's hard as a business owner is like, you don't have like an hourly rate, right? Like, the reality is in the beginning, you're probably making pennies because you're working a million hours. You're always thinking about it. And like, and you have to put every second that you're thinking about your business, you're talking about your business, you're actually working in your physical business or on your physical project. Those are all hours that you're putting in, right? Every conversation you have. So your hourly rate is like nothing, right? So, but over time, you want to start putting a time value on your own time and say, okay, like, what do I think my time is worth? Like, I was doing private lessons for a while. I'm doing private lessons, and private lessons are good money. For it was like $70, and I was like, okay, like I think I'm worth a little $100. And then one day I was like, I think I would like to say that my time is worth $200 an hour. Obviously, it's not always that, but that's where I was like, if somebody wants me for an hour for, to teach them or whatever, it's $200 an hour. And I'm not going to do it for any less than that. And I have all these people that are teaching and training, and they don't have the businesses. They could use the extra income, and they're willing to do it for $60, $70, $80 an hour. So I was like, you know what? Like, it doesn't make sense for me to be doing private lessons anymore, because unless somebody wants to pay me $200, but I actually don't want people to pay me $200 for the class. What I want them to do is go learn from my other guys who are just as good. They're great, and give them the opportunity to make a little bit more income, give them, learn more stuff. And then me just help people after classes, and say, hey, if you need help, I'm happy to work with you. You're in my class. This is my time. I'm on the mat, and this is your time. Ask me questions. I'll spend 15, 20 minutes with you after, and I'll probably give you the same amount of information that I would have in an hour class for $200. So now they all think, I'm super generous because I'm teaching them extra for free all the time, and all my guys. And if they do really want that, somebody to kind of hold their hand a little bit more and do some private lessons, they have opportunities with these other guys, and they're not breaking their bank for it. You know what I mean? So I think that there's a lot to be said to have to set a value for yourself. And it's not just like, oh, I'm worth this. It's also like, hey, that's a better value in my opinion. My other black belt that's almost, if not as good as me, who's charging 1/3, they're the better value than doing the private with me. You should go and do that, and everybody's happy. Yep. You know what I mean? Yep. Everybody wins. So but that's all like these like little micro nuances of businesses, like figuring those things out.
For sure. So I wanted to transition into like more of the marketing aspect. Specifically, I know like you just recently, I know you always had a following on Instagram, but I saw recently you blew up and you're almost up to like 20,000 followers. So I wanted to touch on that and just get your thoughts on Instagram Reels, TikTok, that sort of thing, and how it can benefit, but possibly also hurt business. So I just wanted to get your take on it and see what your input is.
So I don't think, anytime anybody asks me about it, and this is prior to me even doing what I'm doing now, which is growing this personal brand, I'm always an advocate for using social media for doing business. I'm actually not even doing as good of a job for the business right now as I probably could be, because I've been focused, again, like I'm pulling my time from the one to the other, and I probably should just have somebody else run my gym social media while I focus on my own. But I think things like posting every single day, knowing how to hashtag, knowing how to just like get content out there, is extremely valuable. I think that what I'm learning, and something that I've known, but I'm learning more and more as I'm doing my own thing, is that consistency is king. Like, again, people are creatures of habit, right? So like, if every single morning Andy posts a video, like, you don't know you look forward to it, but you kind of look forward to it if you follow that person. And like, I have accounts that like I follow that I don't even really know what they do, but like I see their content every single day, and it's like a semi, like I'm almost expecting to see it. I'm like, okay, like, where's so-and-so? And when they don't post, like, I'll go to their page and be like, what happened?
See if you missed it.
Yeah, I'm like, did I miss it? Exactly. I have this one marketing guy who I'm not even a huge fan of, but he posts every single day. And sometimes like I go to his page just to argue with because I don't agree with certain things that he says, but I want to see what he says and it's every single day. So I think that's the big thing. The only way it can hurt your business, in my opinion, is if like you're like kind of, some people like dual use they make their gym account also their personal account.
I've seen that quite a bit.
Which I don't think is a good idea. Like if you're posting like pictures of yourself at the beach with like a beer, and then the next picture is a picture of your gym. Like if you have a personal account and you're posting some pictures of your gym, fine, or your business, fine. But like if your business account is also your personal account, that's when it can get washy. And if you note it, like if you go to my page, even my personal brand, and this is something, my wife's been in communications forever, and she basically was like, like as soon as I go to your gym, first thing I'm going to do is look you up, right? And when I go to your personal page, like I'm like, what is this? Like, who are you? What, like, are you this? Like, it's like I get that you do all these things, but you kind of got to decide if you want to build a brand, or if not, like then whatever, then just post like personal stuff. So I was like, all right. And between her and my buddy Kevon, who's one of our instructors, and my other brother Richie, like they're just like, dude, just do the content. All right, so fine. So I started doing the content, and now like if you go to, if you come to my gym, you look me up, like boom, immediately, like everything is on brand, So and plus there's extra value there by following me. So you come to the gym, then you go to all these extra techniques. So it like kind of all works together to continue to bolster that brand. And then obviously, hopefully there's going to be opportunities with my own account of maybe segueing that to other opportunities down the line. But I think it's beneficial, and I think the only way you're going to be consistent is by doing really simple things that you can do every day or every other day, whatever your schedule is. Not trying to like, it's great having every once in a while having like really awesome content, interviews, this and that. But if you can't do that every day, and then you only do that once in a while and don't post anything else in between, I think that hurts growth. It's not bad. It's just that you're not going to see any benefit like to traffic, because the reality is with these algorithms and whatever, like you have to remember you're a product of them at that point, right? So like, what is their goal? Their goal is views and people staying on and whatever. And if you post every once in a while, you're not really of any value to them, right? But if you post every single day and like whatever, and people are constantly checking you out and following you, and more people are following you, well, now you become valuable to Instagram. You become valuable to TikTok. That's why they start pushing your content out there, even if it's shitty content, So it's kind of like, how do you kind of meet both? Can you make good enough content where it doesn't look like you're amateur, but simple enough that you can make something every single day or every other day on a schedule consistently? So I think that's the name of the game right now when it comes to using social media for business. And it can't hurt. Like, I don't think it can hurt unless, like I said, the only way is unless you're using it for like, showing pictures of yourself partying, and then also like it's like that's not gonna nobody wants to see that, unless they're your family, your friends and family. But if you want clientele to be interested in what you're doing, or like people that don't know you, it should be all business focused and business, make your own separate personal account if that's the case. But I think there's a lot of value to it.
Yeah. So, do you think like your Instagram reels that you've been doing recently really helped you propel to get from maybe just the following you had from your MMA experience and that sort of thing to now where I'm sure people are all over the world are following you? And
well, so yes, and the really cool thing about that is, so I was on the Ultimate Fighter. Granted, Instagram wasn't a thing at the time, but there was social media, or it might have been brand new and I didn't have it yet. But yeah, I mean, like I fought in front of 2 million people on the Ultimate Fighter. I was a world champion, all these things, and my page never really grew because I didn't know how to use it. And I wasn't the time that I was most popular, Instagram wasn't really there, and I didn't really care about it, about social media anyway. But now I'm growing faster than even probably by this time next year, I'll probably have a larger following than most like mid to low level UFC fighters who are theoretically, in the NFL of MMA, right? Like they're the top. But unless they're doing something, unless they happen to go viral because they had like a crazy knockout or something like that or whatever, they're just another person that's out there competing. And it's not like everybody, like I don't even know 90% of the roster in the UFC. I don't follow them. I don't really care. But I provide value now, right? So, and I realized that with both from my friends' accounts, but also as I started started doing my research and looking at accounts that I might want to emulate, I was like, man, this dude has like no experience, like very little experience, he's got hundreds of thousands of followers, right? And he's making money off of it and all these things. He doesn't have half the credentials I have. He doesn't have any credentials, right? I'm in the Hall of Fame. I was on the Ultimate Fighter, champion out in Japan, like all these things, but nobody follows me, right? Well, it's because who cares? You know, it's like, what are you doing for me? And that's what really made, so either you're entertaining me, like these accounts that like make people laugh, like my buddy Kevon, he does both. Like he's really
his Instagram is great. I love it.
He does good technical content, but a lot of really funny stuff. He's hilarious. And people love it, and he's got a really big following, and he's hitting that. I'm not trying to define. I'm just right now. I'm just doing these simple videos. I want to do more, like kind of expand off of it, but nothing too crazy. But immediately I start providing value, and it starts to grow. You know, and it's like, okay, because people see it, they like it. Oh, they save it because like, why are they going to save it? They're not going to save. They don't care if I like, you know, win something. Like they might say, cool, like, right? But now I provided value. Today I showed you how to escape a guillotine 2 different ways or counter a guillotine 2 different ways, right? Save. Oh, I got to show that to my friend. Share. So now it's value, and it's niche as well. It's like, okay, let me go on their page. Oh, he does this every single day. So yeah, I'll follow him, you know? So like you have to figure like there's more value coming from a page like that even than just somebody that's fighting, you know, unless they're like top 5 in the world and they're very interesting and it's just got, you know, it's the celebrity aspect to it, but most are not celebrities.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's, you know, and I see that even with small accounts, people that know nothing, like they just post a technique every single day. And if nothing else, if they don't grow, if they don't become this big thing, the clients they have coming in have extra value. It's a value add for them, for their clients who are paying them. So it's there's really no losing on it other than a little bit of time that you have to put into it.
Yeah, so I've noticed, especially in the video production world, the people who are really getting a lot of traffic is the people who are putting knowledge out there or teaching people stuff. So yeah, I think that's across the board with pretty much everything. And I've noticed you can tell like the people who are just trying to put value out and the other ones who are like really grasping for straws because they're not really too sure of what to put out. So I've definitely seen any type of like educational stuff is works the best. Just like you said.
Yeah, something again, like can you provide value and you know and you also have to be prepared to not. I mean, with social, I honestly hate social media. I love it, like for what I'm doing and what it can provide and what value it can bring. But it's also like it's so like I hate what it's about. I hate that like draw you in and keep you captured on your phone for forever, right? So like there's that aspect of it which like I'm constantly battling with. And I have a problem. Like I'm on my phone all the time. Yep. It's a problem. Like it's legitimately a problem when I'm not training. Thankfully, I have a healthy lifestyle because if not, like I don't know what I would be doing. Like it's just like I'm just like constantly scrolling and I catch myself. I'm like, gosh, I put my phone down. But then like the reason I was on my phone was because I was trying to do something productive and then I got like caught up. I got sidetracked. Yeah. Right. So, but that being said, I do think that ultimately because of that, you know, like the platforms are really good at keeping you trapped, but if you have something to offer, people do recognize that and they start to latch onto that. But if you don't get views right away or you don't get, like, you have to be prepared to just do it because you like doing it too. Yep. You know, like for me, I wanted to do more business stuff, all this stuff, and then I tried doing a vlog for a little bit, like all, and I realized it just wasn't sustainable for me because I didn't have enough content at the time. Whereas like with jiu-jitsu, I'm there every single day. Yep. So like I just grab 2 guys. Hey, let me just film 2 techniques, you know, and then I have, you know, I'm backed up I have enough techniques for the next 2 weeks, right? At all times. So I just have to takes me 10 minutes to edit a night. So I'm not putting a huge amount of effort. So if one of my videos flops,
so what?
Who cares?
Yeah.
If you spend like 2 hours, 10 hours, 2 days, high production, and it flops, you're going to be bummed out and you're not going to want to do it anymore. You know what I mean? Whereas like, even if I did that now and I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome, and I put something out and I put more time into it and it flopped, I'd be disappointed. But like, oh, well, I'm just going to post my next video tomorrow. You know, it's like, it's just gone. It's in the ether and And that's kind of how you have to look at it. And it's sort of like we were asking about being motivated. It's like the motivation doesn't matter. It's like you just got to do something that you like enough to be disciplined, and then have like foresight or vision of where like you think you want to go with it. And then at a certain point, is it time to pivot? Nobody seems to be liking this. Nobody's commenting. Nobody's engaging. And I've been doing it for 2 months. Okay, maybe pivot a little bit, make a pivot. Don't give up, but like maybe pivot.
Yeah, it's having that self-realization too, that like, hey, or admitting. I think a lot of people have trouble like admitting like, all right, I'm going the wrong direction. I need to pivot. So I think people who have that skill, I think that's huge because you're very self-aware and realize what works and what doesn't.
It's tough though. I think that is probably one of the hardest parts of doing business is having that self-awareness, because there's a fine line between giving up and pivoting, right? So like if you try and it doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to work out, which it never will, doesn't mean it's not going to work out. Just usually it's not going to look exactly like, I always write business plans, but my business plans are very flexible, right? It's sort of more like a path, so that if like I get too far off the path, I can kind of look back, oh yeah, this is where I was headed. This is where I'm trying to head, but not like, okay, it has to be like step by step by step like this. But it is very hard because sometimes you have to be like, all right, sometimes it's just time to pack it in on this, or can I pivot? I think there's almost always a way to pivot, no matter what you're doing. Where like, I had a friend that owned actually like a vitamin and supplement shop. He did okay, just never really took off. Maybe the area he was in, maybe the branding, I don't know. And he just shut it down, right? And fine, he went on to do something else. He's fine. But it's like, well, like, could you have taken it online? Like I think that I would have tried a bunch of different pivots before I would have shut it down. Mm-hmm. So like, did he give up? Technically, yeah. Was it the right decision for him? Maybe. Maybe it was. Maybe he would have pivoted a bunch of different ways, spent a little bit more money, and just been more frustrated. Or maybe he would have figured out something that would have been more sustainable that he could have pushed forward on. So it's a fine balance, and it's not always like a yes or a no or a right or a wrong.
Yeah.
It's just what's right for you isn't right for me all the time. Because we have different ways of looking at things, different priorities, all those things. So, but it is one of the most valuable skills and one of the most difficult in business, I think, is having that wherewithal.
Yeah. So got a ton of awesome information from you, Andy. I really appreciate you being here. So I just wanted to leave it off. What's the best way people can get a hold of you? Maybe through social media or?
Yeah, I mean, my Instagram is at Andy_Main. That's probably the best. I'm on everything, but I don't really go on Facebook much anymore. And LinkedIn, I need to update my LinkedIn. It's definitely not professional enough. I don't really use it, but I think it would be valuable. But yeah, definitely hit me up on Instagram. I mean, I think even if you're not a grappler, I think seeing the type of like techniques and stuff is cool. So, and I love talking business. I love talking about business. I love doing this. Like, this is awesome. I think what you have going here is going to be really cool.
Cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I'm excited for you guys, and I'm happy to support however I can. But yeah, I encourage people all the time. Just shoot me a DM. Just this morning, I had somebody just random that I don't know DM me, asking me questions about, he's moved from UK to South Carolina, and now he wants to figure out how to get into the food business. And he's like, do you have any advice? Yeah, of course I have advice.
That's awesome.
So it might take me a day, but I'll answer everybody. So yeah, just follow me on Instagram and hit me up, shoot me a DM, and I'd love to hear from everybody.
Awesome. Well, thanks again,
Cool.
man. I really appreciate it, and it's always good to see you. So I
Yeah,
think
you too.
it's been a while since
It's been
I
a
saw
little
you.
bit, yeah.
The last
You
time I saw
gotta
you,
you gotta drop in and roll one of these days.
Yep.
Yeah,
Last time I saw you was your in-house tournament.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. You got to stop by for the pro training one day, the 11 a.m. Mondays.
Okay.
We have that. It's just an open roll basically.
Cool.
But it's a good
Yeah,
session.
I'm all about
so
it.
Come by.
We'll have to do a field trip. Everyone from
there you
Max's
go.
gym.
Yeah, get them down there. Tell them to come too.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
And I'll be at the in-house tournament you guys are doing soon.
Cool.
So,
Awesome. Yeah, that'll be fun.
with the cameras. So.
Nice. Good.
Yep.
Awesome.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy.
Very good.